The massive chamber buzzed with hundreds of different voices. Alien creatures of all shapes and sizes filled the seats, their voices mixing into a loud mess of sounds. Some looked like giant insects with clicking mouths. Others were tall and thin, like walking crystals. A few moved like snakes, but stood upright on their tails. In the middle of all this noise sat one human. Captain Lee Tae-ho looked small compared to the other beings around him. He wore a simple blue uniform and held a small tablet in his hands. While everyone else argued and shouted, he just sat quietly and typed on his device. The Galactic Coalition meeting was supposed to discuss important matters: trade routes between star systems, which planets belonged to whom, how to share military resources, but mostly, it seemed like different alien races just wanted to insult each other. A massive crystal creature stood up. His body sparkled in the chamber lights, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like breaking glass. The Velthari Empire demands better trade deals, Admiral Velthar Nexus announced. We have the strongest ships and the best technology. We deserve more profits. Several snake-like beings hissed in response. Their leader rose up, her long body swaying. The Noxtai have controlled these trade routes for centuries, she said with a voice like steam escaping. Your crystal ships are pretty, but they break easily. The insect creatures clicked their mouths rapidly. It sounded like angry typing on old keyboards. Their speaker translated, The Krelvan laugh at both of you. Our swarm tactics have never failed in battle. Through all this arguing, Captain Tae-ho kept typing. He glanced up occasionally, but mostly he focused on his tablet. The other beings barely noticed him. A Velthari officer leaned toward Admiral Nexus. Why do we even let the humans attend these meetings? He whispered, but his crystal voice carried clearly. They only have one planet. Their ships are tiny. What could they possibly contribute? Admiral Nexus looked at Tae-ho and laughed. The sound was like wind chimes in a storm. You're right. Look at him just sitting there like a scared child. I heard their entire fleet has maybe 50 ships. We have thousands. The Noxtai leader joined the conversation. Humans are barely evolved apes, she hissed. They still fight wars on their own planet. How pathetic. The Krelvan clicked in agreement. Their technology is primitive. Their weapons are weak. They're only in the coalition because we felt sorry for them. Captain Tae-ho looked up from his tablet. He made eye contact with Admiral Nexus and smiled politely. Then he went back to typing. This made the aliens laugh even more. They saw his quiet behavior as proof of human weakness. If only they knew what he was really doing. The meeting continued for hours. Different species presented their military reports. The Velthari showed videos of their massive battlecruisers. Each ship was 3 kilometers long and bristled with crystal cannons. The Noxtai displayed their fleet formations. Hundreds of snake-like ships moved together like a living creature. The Krelvan demonstrated their swarm tactics. Thousands of small fighters attacked like angry bees. When it was Earth's turn, Captain Tae-ho stood up. He was much shorter than most other beings in the room. Earth offers to help with any military operations, he said simply. The chamber erupted in laughter. Admiral Nexus could barely speak through his amusement. What could your tiny ships possibly do that our battlecruisers cannot handle? We have patrol boats, a Noxtai officer hissed mockingly. Should we be afraid? The Krelvan clicked so rapidly it sounded like machine gun fire. Maybe they can carry our supplies, their translator said. Their ships are too small for real fighting. Tae-ho nodded calmly. We understand your concerns. We'll do whatever we can to help. This humble response only made them laugh harder. In their minds, it confirmed that humans were weak and scared. What none of them realized was that Tae-ho wasn't taking meeting notes on his tablet. He was doing something much more important. Every time an alien species talked about their military, he analyzed their tactics. When they showed their ship formations, he spotted their weaknesses. While they bragged about their weapons, he calculated how to defeat them. Humans had learned long ago that the best way to understand an enemy was to let them talk. And talk they did. Each species was so proud of their military might that they revealed everything. Fleet sizes, weapon ranges, tactical preferences, command structures. They handed Tejo a complete intelligence briefing and didn't even know it. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Kim Sora sat in her research station orbiting the Moon. Her job was to monitor deep space communications. For months, she had been picking up strange signals from the edge of Coalition space. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the Coalition database. She had sent reports to the Coalition Military Command. Each time, her warnings were dismissed. Human paranoia, they called it. Your primitive sensors must be malfunctioning, but Sora knew her equipment was working perfectly. Something was coming, something big and dangerous. She could feel it in the data patterns she analyzed every day. Back in the Coalition chamber, the meeting was ending. Various species made final threats and promises to each other. Admiral Nexus approached Captain Tejo as the crowd dispersed. "I hope you learned something today, human," he said condescendingly. "Perhaps now you understand how real military powers operate." Tejo looked up at the towering crystal being. "I learned quite a lot, Admiral. Thank you for the education." Nexus laughed and walked away, completely missing the true meaning of Tejo's words. As the chamber emptied, Tejo remained in his seat. He reviewed the data he had collected. Fleet numbers, tactical doctrines, command personalities, technological capabilities. Everything an intelligence officer could want. Other species saw humans as weak because they were quiet. They interpreted politeness as fear and preparation as paranoia. This was their first mistake. Their second mistake would be much more costly. Tejo finally stood and walked toward the exit. He moved calmly through groups of aliens who continued to mock humanity. He listened to their jokes and insults with the same polite smile. Tomorrow he would return to Earth and share his intelligence with the proper authorities. The Coalition thought they knew everything about military power. They were about to learn that the quiet human in the corner had been the most dangerous person in the room. Sometimes the greatest threat is the one you never see coming. 3 months after the Coalition meeting, everything changed. Dr. Kim Sora was working her usual night shift when her computers started screaming warnings. Every alarm in the monitoring station went off at once. Red lights flashed across her control panels. The data streaming across her screens made her blood run cold. Massive energy signatures were moving through Coalition space, not just 1 or 2 ships, but entire fleets. They moved faster than anything in the Coalition database. Their weapons gave off energy readings that broke her measuring equipment. Sora's hands flew over her keyboard as she tried to get more information. What she found terrified her. These weren't Coalition ships. The energy patterns were completely different. Alien, hostile, and they were heading straight for the Coalition's outer colonies. She immediately sent an emergency message to Coalition Command. Then she sent another to Earth's military headquarters. Then she sent a third message directly to Captain Tejo, who was still at the Coalition capital. The response from Coalition Command came back quickly. "False alarm. Your human sensors are malfunctioning again. Stand down." Earth's response was very different. "Confirm readings. Prepare full analysis. Emergency protocols activated." 6 hours later, Sora's worst fears came true. The first attacks hit the Velthari, border worlds without warning. Admiral Nexus was commanding the defense fleet when the enemy appeared. He had 12 massive battle cruisers positioned around the planet Velthar Prime. Each ship was a masterpiece of crystal technology, beautiful and deadly. The enemy fleet that dropped out of hyperspace was different. Their ships looked like someone had taken chunks of black metal and welded them together without caring about appearance. They were ugly, brutal, and massive. The largest enemy ship was 10 kilometers long. "This is Admiral Nexus of the Velthari Defense Fleet," he broadcast. "You are trespassing in Coalition space. Identify yourselves immediately." The response came as a storm of weapons fire. The enemy ships opened up with cannons that fired pure destruction. Nexus watched in horror as one of his beautiful cruisers simply vanished in a ball of white fire. "All ships, return fire," he shouted. The Velthari crystal cannon struck the enemy ships with enough power to crack a moon. The enemy didn't even slow down. Their hulls absorbed the energy like it was nothing. In 15 minutes, Admiral Nexus had lost 8 of his 12 ships. The surviving vessels were badly damaged and retreating as fast as they could. The planet below was already burning. "This is Admiral Nexus," he broadcast on the emergency channel. "We need immediate reinforcement. The enemy has technology far beyond our capabilities. Velthar Prime has fallen. Repeat. Velthar Prime has fallen." The attacks spread like wildfire. The Noxtai tried their famous serpent formations against the invaders. Their snake-like ships moved in perfect coordination, striking from multiple directions at once. It didn't matter. The enemy cut through their formations like scissors through paper. The Krelvin deployed their swarm tactics. Thousands of small fighters attacked the enemy fleet from every angle. The invaders simply activated some kind of energy field that fried every Krelvin ship within 50 kilometers. Captain Tejo received the first distress calls while he was still at Coalition headquarters. The alien officials who had mocked humanity just months before now looked at him with desperate eyes. "Captain," said a Velthari officer, his crystal body dim with fear, "we've lost contact with 5 star systems. Our fleets are being destroyed. We don't understand how this is possible." Tejo studied the tactical reports flowing in from the battle zones. The enemy was systematic and efficient. They didn't just destroy military targets, they eliminated all infrastructure. Shipyards, communication arrays, defense platforms, everything. "Who are they?" asked a Noxtai commander. "The Rathmore Empire," Tejo said quietly. "We've been tracking their communications for months. Dr. Sora tried to warn you." The aliens looked shocked. "Your human detected them first? She tried to tell you 3 months ago. You called it paranoia." More reports came in. The Rathmore Empire was not like other space civilizations. They didn't want territory or resources, they wanted to conquer everything and everyone. Any species that resisted was wiped out completely. General Rathmore Skullcrusher commanded the invasion fleet from his flagship, a massive dark ship called the Worldbreaker. He was a creature built for war. His species looked like someone had mixed a gorilla with a rhinoceros and given it metal claws. "Report," he growled to his officers. "Sector 7 is completely under our control," said his aide. "The crystal creatures fought well, but their technology is primitive. The snake things were faster but lacked coordination. The insect swarms were numerous, but individually weak." Skullcrusher nodded. As expected, intelligence reports indicated this galaxy would be an easy conquest. "Have you identified the primary military powers?" "Yes, General. The Velthari have the largest individual ships. The Noxtai have good mobility. The Krelvin have numbers, but none of them pose a real threat." "Good. Continue the advance. I want this galaxy conquered within 6 months." The aide hesitated. "General, there is one species intelligence hasn't fully analyzed. Humans. They seem to have minimal military presence, but they've been asking many questions about our operations." Skullcrusher laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Questions? From weaklings who can't even leave their own star system? Ignore them. Focus on the real threats." Back at Coalition headquarters, the emergency session was chaos. Every species was shouting demands and accusations. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others demanded impossible counterattacks. Captain Tejo sat quietly in his usual seat, typing on his tablet. The difference was that now some aliens were paying attention to him. Admiral Nexus, his crystal body cracked from battle damage, approached Tejo directly. "Captain, I need to ask, does Earth have any military assets that could help us?" Tejo looked up from his tablet. "We have some ships, Admiral. Not as many as your fleets, but they might be useful." "How many ships?" "Enough." It wasn't really an answer, but Nexus was desperate. "Can you help us?" "We'll do what we can." On Earth, emergency meetings were happening in secret military facilities. Commander Park Jin-soo stood before a room full of officers in an underground command center that no alien had ever seen. "The Rathmore Empire has begun their invasion," he announced. "Coalition forces are being defeated across multiple sectors. Estimated time before they reach Earth, 4 months. The room was silent. These officers had been preparing for this moment for decades. "Orders, sir?" asked Colonel Kim Hyejin. "Begin Phase 1 mobilization. Activate the hidden fleet. Prepare all black projects for deployment. Dr. Song Min-jung stepped forward. I've completed my analysis of Rathmore biology and psychology. They're strong and aggressive, but they have predictable weaknesses. Their military doctrine relies on intimidation and overwhelming force. They've never faced an enemy that refused to be intimidated. Park nodded. Then they're about to learn something new. Signal Captain Tae-ho. Tell him the quiet time is over. Above Earth's surface, civilian ships continued their normal routes. Cargo haulers carried supplies between orbital stations. Passenger liners took tourists to the moon. Everything looked normal and peaceful. But deep below the surface, in hidden facilities that stretched for kilometers underground, something else was happening. Assembly lines that had been building in secret for 50 years finally activated their final phase. The human military had learned a valuable lesson from studying galactic history. Every species that announced their military strength became a target. Every species that showed their weapons gave their enemies time to prepare. Humans had chosen a different path. They built their strength in silence. They prepared for war while appearing peaceful. They studied their potential enemies while being dismissed as harmless. Now the test was coming. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could do when they stopped being quiet. The first sign that something had changed came when Admiral Nexus detected new ships entering the battle zone. His remaining Velthari cruisers were retreating from another Rathmore attack when his sensors picked up multiple contacts approaching from Earth's direction. The readings confused him. The ships were much smaller than anything in the Coalition database, but they moved differently. Faster. More precise. What am I looking at? Nexus asked his sensor officer. Unknown contacts, Admiral. The energy signatures don't match any known ship design. They're strange. On his main screen, Nexus watched as 12 human ships entered visual range. Each vessel was sleek and dark, about the size of a Velthari destroyer, but shaped completely differently. Instead of the crystalline beauty of his own ships or the brutal functionality of Rathmore vessels, these looked like they had been designed by engineers who understood that form should follow function. This is Admiral Han Yu-jin of the Earth. Defense Fleet, came a calm voice over the communication channel. Admiral Nexus, please withdraw your ships to safe distance. We'll handle the Rathmore forces. Nexus stared at his screens. Admiral Han, with respect, you have 12 ships. The Rathmore have 47. Our crystal cannons barely scratch their armor. Understood. Please maintain distance and observe. What happened next changed everything Nexus thought he knew about space combat. The human ships didn't charge forward like Velthari battlecruisers. They didn't form serpent patterns like Noxtai vessels. They didn't swarm like Krelvin fighters. Instead, they seemed to simply disappear. Where did they go? Nexus demanded. His sensor officer stared at his instruments. I'm not sure, Admiral. They were there, and now they're not. It's like they just vanished. The Rathmore fleet noticed the same thing. General Skullcrusher's subordinates reported 12 new contacts that had suddenly gone invisible. Stealth technology? Skullcrusher growled. Unknown, General. Our sensors can't penetrate whatever they're using. Then target the area where they disappeared. Saturate it with weapons fire. The Rathmore ships opened up with their massive cannons, filling the space around the human ship's last known position with deadly energy. They fired for 30 seconds straight, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. When the weapons fire cleared, the area was empty. Report, Skullcrusher demanded. Before his officers could respond, something impossible happened. The Rathmore flagship's primary weapons array simply exploded, then their communication array, then their shield generators. We're under attack. Someone shouted. But I can't see the attackers. Captain Yoon Haiwan smiled as her stealth frigate completed its attack run on the enemy flagship. Her ship's adaptive camouflage made it invisible to Rathmore sensors, and its precision weapons had just crippled the most dangerous enemy vessel. Target neutralized, she reported to Admiral Han. Moving to secondary target. Confirmed. All units, execute attack pattern Alpha. Across the battlefield, 11 other human ships were doing the same thing. They appeared just long enough to fire, then vanished again before the enemy could respond. Each shot was perfectly aimed. No wasted energy, no random destruction. Just surgical strikes on critical systems. The Rathmore ships tried everything. They fired in all directions. They launched sensor drones. They even rammed the areas where they thought human ships might be hiding. Nothing worked. Within 20 minutes, the entire Rathmore attack fleet was drifting helplessly in space. Their weapons were destroyed. Their engines were offline. Their communication systems were fried. But their life support was untouched. Admiral Nexus watched in stunned silence as the human ships reappeared around the disabled Rathmore vessels. "This is Admiral Han to Rathmore forces," came the calm voice. "Your ships are disabled, but your crews are unharmed. You will be taken prisoner. According to coalition military law, any attempt to resist will result in the complete destruction of your vessels." The Rathmore surrender was broadcast across both fleets. Nexus had never seen anything like it. An entire enemy attack force defeated without losing a single human ship. "Admiral Han," Nexus called. "How did you do that?" "Practice, Admiral Nexus." "We've been practicing." Similar scenes played out across coalition space as human forces responded to the Rathmore invasion. Each engagement followed the same pattern. Human ships would arrive, disappear, and then systematically disable enemy forces with surgical precision. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Dong-min was leading a different kind of operation. While the fleet battles raged in space, he and his special forces teams were infiltrating Rathmore ground positions on conquered worlds. The Rathmore military doctrine was simple: overwhelm the enemy with superior force and brutality. They had never faced an enemy that used guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, and precision strikes against specific targets. Choi's team landed on the planet Velthar Prime, using stealth shuttles that the Rathmore couldn't detect. Instead of attacking the main occupation force, they targeted something else entirely: the enemy's confidence. Supply convoys started disappearing without a trace. Communication towers went offline randomly. Rathmore officers found their personal quarters had been entered, and their private possessions rearranged, but nothing was stolen. The psychological effect was devastating. Rathmore troops began to fear that invisible enemies were everywhere. They started shooting at shadows. They became paranoid and jumpy. "Sir," reported a Rathmore captain to his superior, "the troops are requesting permission to withdraw from the planet's surface. They claim the entire world is haunted." "Haunted? By what?" "Ghosts, sir. Human ghosts that can walk through walls and disappear." It wasn't ghosts, of course. It was human. Special forces using technology and tactics that the Rathmore had never encountered. But fear of the unknown was often more powerful than fear of visible enemies. Back at Coalition headquarters, the emergency meetings had a completely different tone. The same alien officials who had mocked humanity now watched tactical displays, showing human victories across multiple star systems. Ambassador Velthar Kristar leaned toward his aide. "How many ships do the humans actually have?" "We don't know, sir. Intelligence estimates range from 50 to 500. Their ships are small enough that our sensors have trouble tracking them. But they're defeating Rathmore fleets that destroyed our battlecruisers in minutes." "Yes, sir." Captain Tejo continued to sit quietly in his usual seat, but now other delegates were approaching him directly. "Captain," said a Noxtai commander, "we need to coordinate our remaining forces with your fleet operations. Can you share your tactical data?" Tejo looked up from his tablet. "Which tactical data would you like, Commander?" "Your ship capabilities, your weapons ranges, your deployment patterns, standard military coordination information." "I'm afraid that's classified." The commander looked frustrated. "But we're allies. We need to work together." "We are working together, Commander. Earth forces are protecting coalition worlds and defeating Rathmore attacks. What more coordination do you need?" It was a polite way of saying that the coalition had never shared their classified information with humanity. So why should humans return the favor? Dr. Song Min-jung was analyzing the results of the first human military operations from her laboratory on Earth. Her xenobiology research had identified key weaknesses in Rathmore psychology and tactics. "They rely entirely on intimidation," she explained to the military briefing. "Their whole empire is built on the idea that they're scarier than anyone else. When they encounter an enemy that refuses to be intimidated, their entire doctrine falls apart. "What about their technology?" asked Commander Park. "Powerful but crude. They build everything to be as destructive as possible, but they don't understand subtlety. Their sensors can detect massive energy signatures but miss smaller, more sophisticated systems. Like our stealth technology." "Exactly. They're looking for enemies that fight like them. Big ships, big weapons, big formations. They're not prepared for opponents who use precision instead of power." The briefing room was silent as the officers absorbed this information. "So we're not just winning these battles," Park said slowly. "We're fighting a completely different kind of war than they've ever faced." "That's correct. And as long as we maintain the technological and tactical advantage, they can't adapt fast enough to counter us." Park nodded. "Then we continue the current strategy. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and hit them in ways they don't expect." Across the galaxy, the Rathmore Empire was discovering that their reputation for invincibility had met its match. For the first time in their history, they were fighting an enemy that couldn't be intimidated, couldn't be overwhelmed, and couldn't be predicted. The quiet humans had finally spoken, and their words were changing everything. General Skullcrusher stared at the tactical display in his command center, and for the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The holographic map showed the Rathmore Empire's advance through coalition space. Red markers indicated worlds under their control. Blue markers showed active resistance. But scattered throughout the display were new yellow markers that made no sense. "Explain these yellow indicators," he growled to his intelligence officer. "Human intervention zones, General. Areas where Earth forces have engaged our fleets." "And the results?" The officer hesitated. "Inconclusive, sir." "Inconclusive? Our fleets either win or lose. There is no inconclusive." "Sir, in every engagement with human forces, our ships have been disabled rather than destroyed. Our crews are taken prisoner, but they're treated well. We've never encountered this tactical approach before." Skull crushers. Massive fists slammed into the display table. "They're making us look weak. A true warrior destroys his enemies completely. These humans are playing games." But they weren't playing games. Dr. Lee Kyung-mi was implementing a carefully planned strategy from her position in Earth's Strategic Command Center. Her three-pronged assault was designed to exploit every weakness in Rathmore military doctrine. The first prong was technological superiority. Human stealth systems made their ships effectively invisible to Rathmore sensors. Human weapons were precise enough to disable specific systems without destroying entire vessels. Human computers were fast enough to coordinate complex attacks in real time. The second prong was tactical flexibility. While Rathmore forces used the same brutal assault tactics in every battle, human forces adapted their approach to each specific situation. Sometimes they used stealth, sometimes they used speed, sometimes they used misdirection. The enemy never knew what to expect. The third prong was psychological warfare. By capturing Rathmore troops instead of killing them, humans were undermining the Empire's core belief that surrender meant death. By treating prisoners well, they were proving that the Rathmore reputation for invincibility was just fear-mongering. Commander, Baek Soo-jin was about to demonstrate all three prongs in the most daring operation yet attempted. Her target was the Rathmore command ship Dark Thunder, which was coordinating attacks on the Nox-Tai home system. The massive vessel was surrounded by 30 smaller warships and protected by energy shields that could stop a nuclear missile. "Remember," Beck told her boarding team as their stealth shuttle approached the enemy fleet, "we're not here to destroy the ship. We're here to capture it." "Ma'am," said Sergeant Kim Woo-jin, "that ship has 10,000 Rathmore troops aboard. We have 12 people, which is why we're not going to fight 10,000 troops. We're going to convince them to surrender." The shuttle slipped through the enemy formation without being detected. Human frequency manipulation technology allowed them to pass through the command ship's shields as if they weren't there. They docked with the hull using magnetic clamps that made no sound. Inside the ship, Beck's team moved through maintenance corridors that Rathmore troops never used. Their goal wasn't the bridge or the weapons control room. It was the ship's central computer core. "Are you sure this will work?" asked Corporal Lee Jin-ho. "Rathmore technology is powerful but not sophisticated," Beck replied. "Their computer security is designed to stop physical attacks, not electronic infiltration." She was right. Within 10 minutes, her team had accessed the ship's main computer and uploaded a human virus that Dr. Song-Min Jung had designed specifically for Rathmore systems. The virus didn't damage anything important. Instead, it took control of the ship's communication systems, internal displays, and environmental controls. Suddenly, every screen on the ship started showing the same message in the Rathmore language. "This vessel has been captured by human forces. Surrender immediately." At the same time, the ship's gravity systems began fluctuating randomly. Lights flickered on and off. The air recycling system started making strange noises. General Skullcrusher received the surrender message while he was in the middle of planning his next attack. His command staff looked at him with confusion and fear. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving surrender demands from our own ship's computer. That's impossible. The message is coming from internal systems, General. Someone has taken control of our computer core," Skullcrusher roared in anger. "Find them. Kill them." But his troops couldn't find the human infiltration team. Beck had chosen their hiding spot carefully. The maintenance tunnels were too small for Rathmore soldiers to navigate, and the team's stealth suits made them invisible to internal sensors. For 6 hours, 10,000 Rathmore troops searched their own ship for 12 humans. They found nothing. Meanwhile, the virus continued to spread through the ship's systems, making life increasingly uncomfortable for the crew. Finally, Skullcrusher had enough. "Open a communication channel to the human forces." "This is Commander Bayek Sujin of Earth. Special Forces," came the reply. "Are you ready to surrender? I want to speak to your superior." "I am the superior for this operation, General. Your ship is under our control. Your weapon systems are offline. Your shields are down. Your engines are disabled. You can surrender with honor, or we can wait here until your life support fails." It was a bluff. The virus couldn't actually disable life support, but Skullcrusher didn't know that. "What are your terms?" "Standard Coalition prisoner protocols. Your crew will be treated humanely. Your wounded will receive medical care. You will be held until the war ends, then returned to your people." Skullcrusher had never heard of an enemy offering such terms. In his experience, defeat meant death or slavery. The idea that humans would capture his forces and then eventually release them was incomprehensible. "And if I refuse?" "Then we stay here until you change your mind. My team has enough supplies for a month. How long can your crew function with unreliable gravity and flickering lights?" The psychological pressure was unbearable. Skullcrusher's troops were already jumpy from months of fighting invisible enemies. The idea that human ghosts were controlling their own ship pushed many of them to the edge of panic. "I accept your terms." The surrender of General Skullcrusher's command ship sent shockwaves through the Rathmore Empire. Never before had one of their top generals been captured by such a small enemy force. But the real impact was on Rathmore morale. Stories spread through their ranks about human soldiers who could walk through walls, disable massive ships with tiny teams, and defeat entire fleets without losing a single vessel. Captain Kim Jae-hyun was monitoring these psychological effects from his intelligence post on Earth. "The enemy is starting to fear us more than they fear failure," he reported. "That's a critical turning point in any military campaign." "How so?" asked Admiral Han. "The Rathmore Empire is built on the idea that their soldiers should be more afraid of their own officers than of the enemy. But now they're more afraid of us than of court-martial. That breaks their discipline structure. And undisciplined troops make mistakes." "Exactly. They're starting to retreat from battles they could win, simply because they're afraid we might be there." The coalition forces were witnessing this change firsthand. Admiral Nexus found himself working alongside human commanders for the first time, and the experience was educational. "Your tactical approach is completely different from ours. he told Admiral Han during a joint planning session. We focus on overwhelming the enemy with superior firepower. You focus on making the enemy defeat themselves. It's more efficient, Han replied. Why destroy something when you can capture it? Why kill enemies when you can convert them? Every Rathmore soldier we treat well becomes proof to other Rathmore troops that surrender is a viable option. But doesn't that just encourage more resistance? Actually, it encourages more surrenders. Fear of death makes soldiers fight desperately. Hope for survival makes them consider alternatives. Nexus was beginning to understand why human forces were so effective. They weren't just better at fighting. They were better at thinking about fighting. On the planet Krelvin 7, Major Kwan So-hee was demonstrating another aspect of human military philosophy. Instead of occupying the world with massive garrison forces, her team was working with local resistance groups to drive out the Rathmore occupation. We can't defeat them in open battle, she explained to the insectoid resistance leaders. But we don't need to. We just need to make occupation so expensive and difficult that they leave. Her strategy involved training local fighters in guerrilla tactics, providing them with human technology, and coordinating attacks on Rathmore supply lines. The result was an occupation force that spent more time defending itself than controlling the population. Similar operations were taking place on dozens of worlds. Human special forces teams were turning the Rathmore Empire's own tactics against them. The psychological pressure of fighting invisible enemies on every front was breaking down their military effectiveness. In his private quarters aboard the crippled Dark Thunder, General Skullcrusher reviewed intelligence reports about human military capabilities. What he read terrified him more than any enemy he had ever faced. Humans didn't just have advanced technology. They had advanced thinking. They studied their enemies, adapted to changing situations. The message reached Earth just as Fleet Admiral Oh Seo-jun was reviewing the final preparations for Operation Silent Thunder. The communication came directly from the Rathmore Emperor himself, transmitted across the galaxy on frequencies that no one thought the Empire knew humans could access. I am Emperor Rathmore the Eternal, the message began. For 500 years, my empire has conquered 12 galaxies. No species has ever resisted us successfully, but you have done something impossible. You have made my armies afraid. Oh paused the message and looked around the command center. Her officers were watching the transmission with intense focus. This was the first direct communication Earth had received from the highest levels of the Rathmore Empire. I do not understand your military methods, the Emperor continued. You fight without honor. You capture instead of killing. You help your enemies instead of destroying them. This makes no sense to a warrior race. Dr. Shin Hyojung interrupted from her science station. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildups across Rathmore space. It looks like they're mobilizing everything they have. Oh nodded and resumed the message. But I understand results. My forces are in retreat across this galaxy. My generals speak of human ghosts and invisible ships. My troops surrender rather than fight to the death. This cannot continue. The holographic image of the Emperor appeared on the main screen. He looked exactly like General Skullcrusher, but larger and more scarred. His armor was black metal covered in the bones of defeated enemies. I am bringing the core fleet to end this rebellion. 100,000 ships. The combined might of our entire empire. No species has ever survived an encounter with the core fleet. The message ended with coordinates and a timestamp. The Rathmore Empire's ultimate weapon was coming to Earth's solar system. They would arrive in 72 hours. The command center was silent for a moment. Then Admiral O smiled. Signal all human forces, she ordered. Operation Silent Thunder is now active. It's time to show the galaxy what we've really been building. Captain Taeho received the mobilization order while he was still at Coalition headquarters. The alien delegates were in complete panic over the news that the Rathmore core fleet was mobilizing. 100,000 ships, Admiral Nexus said, his crystal body flickering with stress patterns. The combined Coalition fleet at full strength was only 12,000 vessels, and most of those are already destroyed. How many ships can Earth contribute to the defense? Asked a Noxtai commander. Taeho looked up from his tablet. For the first time in months, He wasn't typing. Instead, he was just watching the chaos around him. All of them, he said simply. How many is all of them? Nexus pressed. Enough. It was the same answer Tae-ho had given months ago, but now no one was laughing. On Earth, the truth about human military preparation was finally being revealed. The small patrol ships that alien observers had seen were just the surface layer of Earth's defense network. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in facilities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers underground, the real human fleet was emerging. Commander Park Jin-soo stood on the observation deck of the primary manufacturing facility and watched as the final ships rolled off the assembly lines. Each vessel was a masterpiece of human engineering, designed with 50 years of careful research and development. Final count? He asked his aide. 15,000 frontline vessels, sir. Another 5,000 support ships, all equipped with the latest stealth weapons and defensive systems. Crew status? All ships fully crewed and ready for deployment. The crews have been training in secret for years. Park nodded. The human military had learned from studying every major space battle in galactic history. They had identified the key factors that determined victory and defeat. Then they had spent decades building a fleet that could exploit every advantage. Dr. Shin Hyo-jung was preparing humanity's most secret weapon, the quantum communication network. While other species struggled with the delays caused by faster-than-light communication, humans had developed instantaneous communication across any distance. Network status? Admiral O asked. All nodes active and synchronized, Shin replied. Every human ship, station, and facility is connected in real time. We can coordinate our entire fleet as if it was a single organism. This was the technological breakthrough that made everything else possible. While enemy fleets had to rely on preset battle plans and local commanders making independent decisions, human forces could adapt and coordinate instantly across vast distances. The Rathmore Core fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 100,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system in the largest military formation ever assembled. The flagship alone was 50 kilometers long. Emperor Rathmore the Eternal stood on his command bridge and studied the readings from Earth. What he saw confused him. Report, he commanded. Minimal activity, my lord. A few patrol ships, some civilian traffic. No significant military presence. That's impossible. Intelligence reports indicate this system is the center of human military operations. Perhaps they have evacuated, Emperor. Many species flee when they hear the core fleet is coming. The Emperor studied the tactical display. After months of reports about invisible human ships and impossible victories, he had expected to find a massive defense fleet waiting for him. Instead, Earth looked almost defenseless. Begin the advance. But maintain full alertness. These humans have proven to be unexpected. What the Emperor couldn't see was that Earth was far from defenseless. The human fleet was there, surrounding his forces, but their stealth technology made them completely invisible to Rathmore sensors. Captain Yu Min-sik commanded the newest human flagship, a vessel called the Silent Guardian. His ship was positioned less than a kilometer from the Emperor's flagship, but the Rathmore had no idea they were there. All units, report status, he broadcast on the quantum network. Responses came back instantly from 15,000 ship commanders scattered throughout the solar system. Every human vessel was in position and ready. Admiral O, this is Captain Hugh. The trap is set. Confirmed. All units prepare for Operation Thunderstrike. The Rathmore fleet continued its advance toward Earth, confident that they were facing minimal resistance. They had used this same approach to conquer hundreds of worlds. Overwhelming force applied quickly and brutally. But as they moved deeper into the solar system, strange things began to happen. Ships on the edge of the formation simply vanished. Not destroyed, just gone. One moment they were there, the next moment they weren't. Emperor, reported a nervous communications officer. We've lost contact with 47 vessels in the last 10 minutes. Define lost contact. They're not responding to signals, my lord. But they're not showing as destroyed either. They've just disappeared. More ships vanished. then more. The disappearances were random and silent. No explosions, no distress calls, no debris fields. Ships just stopped existing. Fear began to spread through the core fleet. These were the most experienced and disciplined troops in the Rathmore Empire, but they had never faced anything like this. Major Kwan So-hee was leading one of the boarding operations that was causing the disappearances. Her team's stealth shuttle had attached to a Rathmore cruiser without being detected. Within minutes, they had accessed the ship's computer core and uploaded the surrender virus. But this time, the virus was more sophisticated. Instead of just taking control of internal systems, it also activated the ship's stealth generators. Technology the Rathmore had stolen from other species but never fully understood. The result was that Rathmore ships were being turned invisible by their own equipment, operated by human software. "This is brilliant," Kwan said as she watched 30 captured ships disappear from Rathmore sensors. "We're not just defeating them, we're recruiting their fleet." Emperor Rathmore was discovering that his reputation for invincibility was useless against an enemy that refused to be intimidated. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. "Unknown, Emperor. They're not destroyed, they're just not there anymore." "That's impossible." "Yes, my lord. But it's happening anyway." The psychological pressure was enormous. Rathmore troops had been taught that they were the ultimate predators. The idea that an invisible enemy was picking them off one by one struck at their deepest fears. Admiral O watched the enemy fleet's formation begin to break down as panic spread through their ranks. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Suddenly, the space around the Rathmore fleet lit up with weapons fire. But the shots weren't coming from visible ships. They were coming from empty space. Human vessels decloaked just long enough to fire, then vanished again before the enemy could respond. Each shot was perfectly aimed at non-critical systems: engines, weapons, communications. The goal was to disable, not destroy. The core fleet found itself under attack by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't fight back against. "Emperor," his tactical officer reported, 60% of our fleet is either missing or disabled. We're losing ships faster than we can count them." Emperor Rathmore stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In less than 2 hours, the most powerful military force in galactic history had been reduced to a collection of drifting hulks. "Signal retreat," he said quietly. "My lord, signal retreat." The surrender ceremony took place aboard the Coalition headquarters station, but everything had changed since the last time these delegates had gathered. The massive chamber was still filled with representatives from dozens of species, but now, they all faced a new reality. Captain Taeho sat in his usual quiet spot, but he was no longer ignored. Every alien eye in the room focused on him as he calmly reviewed the surrender documents on his tablet. Emperor Rathmore the Eternal stood in the center of the chamber, but he looked far from eternal now. His black armor was dented, his bone decorations were cracked, and his massive frame seemed somehow smaller. Beside him stood General Skullcrusher, who had requested to be present for the formal surrender. Admiral Nexus approached the human delegation first. His crystal body, once proud and gleaming, now showed the scars of battle and the dimness of humility. "Captain Taeho," he said carefully, "on behalf of the Velthari Empire, I must formally apologize for our previous misconceptions about human military capabilities." Taeho looked up from his tablet and smiled politely. "No apology necessary, Admiral. You judged us based on the information you had available." "Information we refused to seek," Nexus admitted. "We saw your quiet nature as weakness instead of wisdom." The Noxtai commander slithered forward. "We also misjudged your species. We thought silence meant fear. We now understand it meant preparation." Even the Krelvin delegate clicked in acknowledgement. The swarm recognizes that individual strength is not measured by volume of sound. Professor E. Lim Sang-woo stood to address the assembly. He was Earth's chief diplomatic scientist, and his job was to explain humanity's philosophy to the galaxy. "Distinguished delegates," he began. "Many of you have asked how humans achieved what seemed impossible. The answer is simple: we listened." He activated a holographic display showing the timeline of human space exploration. When Earth first joined the coalition 50 years ago, we were indeed the weakest member. Our technology was primitive, our military was small, and our influence was minimal. But we had one advantage that we cultivated carefully. Nobody paid attention to us. The display showed human scientists attending coalition meetings, human officers observing military exercises, human diplomats asking seemingly innocent questions. While other species competed to prove their strength, we focused on learning about everyone else's. We studied your tactics, your technologies, your cultures, and most importantly, your weaknesses. Admiral Nexus shifted uncomfortably. You were gathering intelligence. We were gathering understanding, Lim corrected. Intelligence implies deception. Understanding is simply education. Everything we learned was from public sources. You shared your military capabilities openly because you were proud of them. Dr. Jung Yunha stepped forward with a datapad. For example, Admiral Nexus, your crystal ships are beautiful and powerful, but they're also predictable. Your tactics never change because your culture values traditional honor over adaptation. She turned to the Noxtai commander. Your serpent formations are elegant and fast, but they require perfect coordination. Disrupt the lead ship and the entire formation becomes confused. Then she faced the Krelvan delegate. Your swarm tactics are effective against traditional enemies, but they're vulnerable to wide-area energy fields because you group too closely together. The aliens looked stunned. Humans had identified and cataloged weaknesses that these species didn't even know they had. But how did you develop countermeasures so quickly? Asked the Noxtai commander. Captain Yu Minsik answered from his position near the observation windows. We didn't develop them quickly. We developed them over 50 years. While you were fighting each other and competing for resources, we were building a military specifically designed to defeat every known threat in the galaxy, including the Rathmore Empire, asked Nexus. Especially the Rathmore Empire. Dr. Sora detected their advanced scouts 3 years ago. We've been preparing for this specific invasion ever since. Emperor Rathmore finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but carried clearly across the chamber. Your species fights without honor. You use deception and tricks instead of honest combat. Tejo stood up for the first time during the ceremony. Emperor, with respect, you're confusing honor with stupidity. Is it honorable to send soldiers into battle with inferior weapons? Is it honorable to use tactics that get your people killed unnecessarily? A warrior should face his enemy directly. A leader should protect his people effectively. We chose effectiveness. Dr. Song Minjung joined the conversation. Emperor, we studied your empire's history. Over 500 years, you conquered 12 galaxies and killed trillions of sentient beings. You call that honorable? We conquered the weak to make room for the strong. You conquered others because you never learned to grow your own strength through cooperation instead of domination. The Emperor looked confused. Cooperation? Professor Lim activated another display, this one showing Earth's development over the past 50 years. While your empire expanded through conquest, human civilization expanded through innovation. We didn't need to steal resources from other planets because we learned to use our own resources more efficiently. The display showed fusion reactors, closed-loop manufacturing, sustainable agriculture, and advanced recycling systems. We didn't need to enslave other species because we developed automation that could handle dangerous work. We didn't need to destroy our enemies because we learned to make former enemies into allies. Captain Yoon Haiwan gestured toward the Rathmore delegation. Even now, after everything your empire has done, we're offering you a choice. Join the coalition as equals, or return to your home galaxy and rebuild your civilization peacefully. You would trust us after we invaded your space. We would give you the opportunity to prove that trust is warranted. That's what civilization means. The belief that beings can change and grow. General Skullcrusher stepped forward. I have fought wars across 12 galaxies. I have never encountered an enemy that offered to help rebuild what they had just defeated. Admiral Han Yujin responded from the human military section. That's because you've never fought a war to create peace. You've only fought wars to create more war. I don't understand the difference. A war to create more war ends when one side is destroyed. A war to create peace ends when both sides choose cooperation over conflict. The ceremony continued with the formal presentation of surrender terms. But these weren't the harsh conditions that usually followed military defeat. Instead, they were a framework for integration and rehabilitation. Rathmore military forces would be disbanded, but their personnel would be offered positions in coalition defense forces after retraining. Rathmore worlds would maintain self-governance, but under coalition oversight. Most importantly, Rathmore technology and knowledge would be shared with the coalition in exchange for access to more advanced and sustainable technologies. Emperor Rathmore studied the documents with obvious confusion. These terms are more generous than many species offer to their allies. That's the point, Tejo explained. We want you to become our allies, not our slaves. Slaves rebel, allies cooperate. But what guarantee do you have that we won't rebel? Anyway, Dr. Jung Eunha smiled. Because we understand your psychology better than you do. Your species rebels against oppression, but you respond positively to respect and opportunity. We're offering both. The signing took place under the watchful eyes of thousands of beings from across the galaxy. As Emperor Rathmore placed his mark on the surrender documents, he asked one final question. How long have you been planning this moment? Captain Tejo looked up from his tablet, which he had been using to coordinate reconstruction efforts throughout Coalition space. Since the day Earth joined the Coalition, Emperor, we always knew that eventually we would face a threat that could destroy everything we had built. So we prepared for that day, while hoping it would never come. And now that it has come? Now, we build something better. The ceremony ended with a moment that no one had expected. Admiral Nexus approached Captain Tejo and formally requested that Earth take the lead role in Coalition military command. We've seen what human strategic thinking can accomplish, Nexus said. We want to learn from you. Other species quickly added their support. The Noxtai wanted human advisors for their fleet tactics. The Krelvan requested human assistance in developing new technologies. Even former Rathmore officers expressed interest in studying human military philosophy. The chamber emptied. Tejo remained in his seat, still typing on his tablet. But now he wasn't alone. Representatives from dozens of species approached him with questions, requests for cooperation, and offers of friendship. The quiet human who had been ignored for so long was now the center of galactic attention. But he handled it the same way he had handled everything else, with calm competence and careful planning. Dr. Sora watched the proceedings from her research station and smiled. The galaxy had finally learned that the most dangerous threats often came not from the loudest voices, but from the quiet ones who were listening, learning, and preparing. As Captain Yu Minsik stood on the observation deck watching former enemies work together to repair the damage of war, he reflected on the lesson that the galaxy had learned.